Sola, mamá. ¿Venezuela? ¿Sí? ¿Qué tantos años tienes? ¿2?
Ahí viene mamá, ahí viene mamá.
¿Ah?
¿Me puede ayudar?
¿Vienes con tu mamá o tu papá?
Nadie.
Well, not only have we seen migrant children abandoned at the border, but we've also seen kids and toddlers being thrown over the border wall under the Biden administration. Fortunately, President Trump is reportedly making it more difficult for unaccompanied minors from being released from federal custody, which in turn would discourage parents from sending their children to the U.S. alone. Meanwhile, Trump also wants to amend the 14th Amendment on birthright citizenship, writing in part on Truth Social, quote, "The 14th Amendment right of American citizenship never had anything to do with modern-day gatecrashers. Our lawyers and judges have to be tough and protect America." Even Trump's biggest critics are now admitting that the president could successfully challenge the 14th Amendment on birthright citizenship. As two constitutional scholars argue in the New York Times, the Supreme Court has held in the 1898 case United States versus Wong Kim Ark that children born here to permanent residents are citizens, but it has never squarely held that children born to those illegally present are citizens. You know, Griff, first I want to go back to that heart-wrenching video of those children at the border and just how devastating it is. Hundreds of thousands of children who have been sent here alone across the border are unaccounted for at this time. What can we do at this point?
You know, Nicole, what's so heartbreaking is that even late in the Biden administration, they did stiffen the asylum requirements to try and bring the numbers down, and they declined significantly from the height of their unprecedented crisis. But children kept coming. Why? Because they exempted children. The children would still be allowed to stay. It's like they never figured it out. Here's a short snippet of one of the ones. I'm with Texas DPS with Lieutenant Olivares and Lupe Caceres, and literally walked up on a child that was abandoned. Watch this.
He's got a cell phone, address. Looks like Louisiana. That's where he's supposed to go to. ¿Tú viniste solo?
¿Y tú, señora, desde Honduras o de?
Honduras. 2 años?
2 years old, literally dropped over a wall because that's in the RGV in Mission, Texas, and had a note around his neck. And, you know, for the previous administration that said it wanted to be the most humanitarian in history, there is nothing humanitarian. That is just heart-wrenching to see those scenes.
Well, it is, Sarah. You know, during Donald Trump's first term, he actually tried to make it more difficult for unaccompanied minors to come across the border. And what he's trying to do now is similar to what he did then by saying that people who sponsor the children who come across, so whoever's name is on that little card, they need to be fingerprinted and put into the system so that we have record of who they are. But people are pushing back on that, saying, well, if you do that, then they're not going to come forward to claim these children because they themselves may be here illegally. But doesn't that just go to the point of what President Trump is trying to do, that people need to be here legally and not illegally?
Absolutely. And first and foremost, if you're allowing your 2-year-old child to be trafficked by a nefarious organization, these human trafficking organizations that Griff and I are so familiar with, we've spent so much time at the border, Griff. I've seen that myself. My heart is broken. I wanted to cry when I heard that child crying. These children are left to these nefarious people. They have been brutalized. There are pedophiles on the road. There are so many dangers. These parents that have allowed that to happen should be fingerprinted and should be sent to jail, in my opinion, because we would be. And I have a very serious issue with that. I speak Spanish. My mother was an immigrant, but my mother would have never sent me or my brother alone on some journey with some nefarious organization to try to get to the United States or abandon us. And I have a very difficult time with this.
It certainly is heartbreaking. And Biden's border failures went beyond just abandoning kids. His administration has also abandoned American workers. According to the Center for Immigration Studies, a whopping 88% of all new jobs went to immigrants instead of U.S. citizens under the Biden administration. That's 4.7 million jobs. All this while a near record share of working-age American men are sitting on the sidelines. 645,000 of them have been out of the labor force since January 2020. But the far-left media likes to claim the U.S. economy would collapse without immigrants.
Americans don't want to do that work. It's frankly just too backbreaking. So who's going to work the farms?
I can't wait. until American women can't get blueberries for their smoothies. I cannot wait until there is a full crackdown on all small businesses.
And we need immigrants in this country. Forget the fact that the farm, that our vegetables would rot in the ground if they weren't being picked by many immigrants, many illegal immigrants.
You're going to have construction sites that will lie dormant.
Wow, well, the condescension is palpable. That was rather offensive. Meanwhile, we're learning how Biden's Department of Health and Human Services reportedly splurged more than $22 billion on grants for migrants, including using FEMA to indirectly pay for shelters. With the Associated Press saying FEMA does not send money directly to New York hotels. It does administer money on behalf of U.S. Customs and Border Protection authorized by Congress in 2023 for the Shelter and Services Program. It was created to support local governments and non-government organizations that provide support to non-citizens released by immigration authorities. And now President Trump is trying to claw back that $59 million spent to shelter illegals. You know, Joe, I want to first go to the first one where we're talking about the jobs. And it is staggering. When you look at the labor statistics, I do want to say that it's not as black and white. The labor statistics do include 65 and above citizens. Yeah. So it's a little diluted with the retirement age in there. But that doesn't explain the big picture. And yes, immigrants do actually contribute a lot to our workforce. That, in my opinion, is because that businesses are incentivized to take immigrants because they accept lower pay, they get grants, public perspective of diversity, and then also you have a lot of, when people in COVID hit, you had a lot of people given government handouts to stay home, and they didn't want to go back to work.
Precisely. The pick the crops argument I find very interesting, because Stephen Miller has pointed this out. He did it right to Jake Tapper during a great interview that you have to watch sometime, because Tapper went with the same thing. Who's going to pick the crops? And Stephen Miller said, well, 1% of all farm workers are comprised of illegal immigrants. 1%. Right. So I'm pretty sure the crops are still going to be picked, and all these ridiculous jobs that Adam Schiff calls backbracing, many Americans will gladly take that at this point if it means putting more money in their pockets. This is why Donald Trump did so well with the black vote and with the Latino vote, which is usually owned by the Democratic Party. Usually 90% goes to the Democratic presidential nominee in terms of the black vote. 70% of Latinos vote for the Democrat. That didn't happen remotely this time around. And until Democrats understand that when you flood cities with all these illegal immigrants and budgets are exhausted, we're at a point where social services like education and sanitation and police are impacted to the point where people don't feel as safe, or their kids are getting as educated, or their cities are not as clean. They will never win a national election again without that coalition of black vote, Latino vote, because they are pissed off that their jobs are being taken.
It's changing real quick. In San Diego today, our colleague Bill Malusian reports a San Diego migrant shelter that received FEMA money closed its doors, laid off 115 employees because they've received 0 new migrants since Trump was inaugurated.
Wow. Well, and frankly, what the Dems are saying is frankly racist statements, and people should not be ashamed of being sharecroppers or picking crops. That's just a very valuable job.
The 14th Amendment argument is going to be interesting to watch.
Oh, yeah.
Still ahead, one GOP lawmaker is proposing to Americafy Greenland if Trump purchases the country. And the USA hockey team gave a sweet sucker punch to Canada during last night's Four Nations tournament.